Hi friends, I'm so happy to see you and I miss you guys so much. And I thought some story times would be a lot of fun for all of us. So my son Anthony helped me set this up and we're gonna see, and hopefully we don't have any technical difficulties and we'll see how this goes. Today's St. Patrick's Day, so I have on my shamrock and rainbow earrings and my green. And happy birthday to Lainey. Her birthday was yesterday. She turned 5. So happy birthday, Lainey. And the first story I have for you today is Curious George Discovers the Rainbow. And you guys know that Curious George is one of my very favorite storybook characters. He is a little monkey who gets into all kinds of trouble, but he does not mean to get into trouble. He's curious and things happen sometimes. So, Curious George discovers the rainbow. George was a good little monkey and always very curious. Sometimes curiosity gets a good little monkey lost in the woods, especially when he's chasing leprechauns. Would you believe that's how George discovered the rainbow? And it all started on a bright, sunny day. It was a beautiful day in the country. Steve and Betsy were visiting from the city for the first time. George couldn't wait for their outdoor adventure to begin, but first they had to unpack. When Betsy dropped her books, George rushed to help her pick them up. That's when he saw something he had never seen before, something amazing. "That's a rainbow, George," said Betsy. "See the pot of gold at the end and the leprechaun? Rainbows are always the same 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet." Now, violet is purple, and indigo is kind of a color in between purple and blue. So here are these pictures. "Rainbows are created by the sun and the rain," Betsy explained, "but I can make a rainbow without either. Want to see?" A rainbow inside? George could hardly wait. Betsy used scissors to cut a slit in the center of a piece of paper. Then she taped the paper over a flashlight and shined the light through a fishbowl full of water. The flashlight is like a sunbeam and the water is like a giant raindrop. The light shines through the water and behold, Betsy said proudly, a rainbow. I have never tried that before, but that would probably be a pretty fun science experiment. George thought Betsy's rainbow was nice, but there was no leprechaun or pot of gold. George wondered if he would ever see a real rainbow that spanned the whole sky. Have you? He looked out the window. White, fluffy clouds floated by. "Looks like a nice day," said the man with the yellow hat. Meanwhile, the man helped Steve prepare for a hike. "Have you ever seen any wild animals?" Steve asked. "We've got skunks and deer, and I've even seen a moose or two," the man replied. "A moose," Steve said. "Now there's something you don't see in the city." At last, it was time for their hike. Outside, the sun was shining, but the temperature was cooler and more clouds were rolling in. "I'm driving into town to get food for dinner," said the man. Just then, thunder grumbled low in the distance. "If it rains, head home," he added. "George knows the way." George led them into the forest. Now that kind of seems like a bad idea, to have the monkey who gets in trouble all the time take you on a hike. "I'm not leaving without a picture of a moose," Steve said. Just then, he felt a raindrop. "Oh no, not rain. Do we have to go back already?" "I don't think so," Betsy said. "It's probably going to stop soon. Look, the sun is already peeking through the clouds." Now, do you guys know what happens when we have rain and a little bit of sunshine at the same time? It's a rainbow. Sunlight and rain at the same time? Could this be George's lucky day? Sure enough, when he turned around, there was a huge, colorful rainbow across the sky. His wish had come true. "That's the biggest rainbow I've ever seen," said Betsy. George was excited to have found a rainbow, but he couldn't see the pot of gold from here. Steve was excited too. "I'm climbing this tree to take a picture of the rainbow," he said, scampering high into its branches. George needed a better view too. he knew if he was going to find the pot of gold or see a leprechaun, he needed to get closer. So what do you think he did? George ran off in search of the rainbow's end with Charky close behind. "Charky, George, wait!" Betsy yelled, chasing them through the rain. When Betsy finally caught up with them, George tried to explain that he had wanted to reach the pot of gold. But no matter how far or how fast he and Charky ran, the rainbow only got farther away. "The leprechaun with a pot of gold is just a fairy tale," said Betsy. "But I guess it couldn't hurt to look just in case, could it, Steve?" But Steve was nowhere in sight. "He'll catch up with us," said Betsy. "Let's keep going." They hadn't gone far when something small and green hopped through the bushes. Could it be the leprechaun? George thought he must be getting close to the pot of gold now. But it was only a green frog. Usually George would be happy to meet a frog, but it was no leprechaun. George wasn't disappointed for long, though, because the frog had led him to a second rainbow. "Sorry, George," Betsy said, "that's not another rainbow. It's only the reflection of the rainbow on the water." "How will we keep chasing the rainbow now? We need to cross the river." Just then, Charky darted through the bushes after the frog and found what they needed most, a boat. "Uh-oh," Betsy said as they floated away. "How will Steve ever catch up with us now?" Meanwhile, Steve realized he was all alone. "Charky, Betsy, George, where are you?" he called. Suddenly, something moved in the bushes. What do you think it was? "A moose!" Steve shouted, snapping a picture, but the moose didn't like Steve's loud voice or his camera. Steve was scared. He was about to call for help when he heard a voice. That is not a friendly-looking moose. "Back away from the moose slowly," the boy said. It was George's friend Bill. He knew a lot about the wilderness. "And whatever you do, don't frighten it," Bill added. The moose walked off into the forest. When the coast was clear, Bill introduced himself. "I'm Bill, and you're lucky I found you. Moose can be dangerous." "Hey, I'm Steve," he said to Bill. "Since you're so good at finding things, maybe you can help me find my sister and our friend George." "I know George," Bill said. "Follow me. I saw his friend in town. He'll help us." "Steve," said the man, "where are Betsy, Charky, and George?" "We got separated in the woods," Steve said. "I don't know where they went." Just then, something sparkly caught his eye. More rainbows! "Oh, yeah," Steve remembered. "George saw a rainbow right before they ran off." "If I know George, I bet he went to find the gold at the end of the rainbow. I have an idea to help him get home," the man said. Oh, here are these pictures. When George, Betsy, and Charky reached the shore, daylight was fading, and so was the rainbow. George knew they needed to get home before dark. There was only one problem. He didn't know where they were anymore. Suddenly, Charky began to bark. Something was glowing from the end of the rainbow. It must be their pot of gold. George, Betsy, and Charky raced towards the light. "George, over here," the man called. "With the yellow balloon?" He was standing on the roof of their house holding a bright, shiny balloon that was wearing a very familiar yellow hat. Oops. George was happy to be home with his friends. There was no pot of gold, but he knew he had found the real treasure at the end of the rainbow. His friend with the yellow hat. The end. I hope you guys like that story. It's one that I really like because my Anthony here, when he was 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, every time we saw a rainbow, he wanted to run after it and see, just in case, see if there was a pot of gold at the end. But, and he would have gotten lost just like George, but fortunately, we would go out with him and look and see. Thanks, and I will have another great story for you next time. It's called Stuck, and it's about a kite that gets stuck in a tree and all kinds of craziness ensues. Okay, miss you guys. Love you. See you later. Bye.